One evening in early July 1937, a teenage girl named Betty Klink sat at her family's shortwave radio in St. Petersburg, Florida, and heard a woman's voice fighting through the static. The voice said she was Amelia Earhart. For almost 2 hours, Betty copied what she heard into a school notebook. Pleas for help, talk of rising water, a man in the background who sounded hurt. One problem. According to the United States Navy, Amelia Earhart's plane had gone into the Pacific Ocean 3 days earlier. That notebook sits at the center of one of the strangest unsolved cases of the 20th century. Because Betty was not alone. In the week after Earhart vanished, dozens of radio operators across the Pacific and North America reported distress calls on her frequencies. If even one of those calls was genuine, the official story of her final flight is wrong. So what exactly did all those people hear? Start at the beginning. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia Earhart was 39 years old and roughly 22,000 miles into an attempt to fly around the world close to the equator. That morning, she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, lifted off from La, New Guinea, in a twin-engine Lockheed Electra. Ahead lay the most dangerous leg of the route, 2,556 miles of open ocean ending at Howland Island, a strip of sand and coral about 1.5 miles long. Miss it, and there was nothing but water for hundreds of miles. Waiting at Howland was the Coast Guard cutter Itasca, assigned to guide her in by radio. And this is where everything began to fail. Through the night, the Itasca heard Earhart's transmissions growing steadily stronger. She could not hear them. Some researchers believe a receiving antenna on the aircraft's belly tore away during the takeoff at La. Whatever the cause, pilot and ship talked past each other for hours, each calling into the dark and getting no answer. At 7:42 in the morning, her voice burst through, loud and urgent. She said they must be right on top of the island, but could not see it, and that gas was running low. The operators rated her signal strength at maximum, which meant she was close, probably within 100 miles. At 8:43 came one final message. She was flying a navigation line, 157337, running north and south. Then nothing. The Itasca called for hours. The ocean gave nothing back. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was the beginning of a much stranger one. That same night, hours after her fuel should have been exhausted, operators in the Pacific began reporting faint carrier waves and broken fragments of a woman's voice on 3,105 kilocycles, Earhart's nighttime frequency. A station on Nauru logged a voice that sounded like hers. The reports kept coming, night after night, for nearly a week, from ships, from shore stations, and from home receivers as far away as Texas and Florida. Researchers eventually cataloged around 120 claimed receptions from those few days. Decades later, the Aircraft Recovery Group tire-tested every one of them against time, frequency, and the physics of radio propagation, and judged 57 of them credible. Here is the detail that changes everything. Lockheed's own engineers were clear. The Electra could not transmit from the water. Salt water would short its electrical system within moments, and the radio drew its power from a generator on the right-hand engine. To send any signal at all, the aircraft had to be on land, largely intact, with that engine able to run. So if even a handful of those 57 signals really came from Earhart, she never crashed into the sea. She landed somewhere, and the clue to where may have been hiding inside her own final message. Pan American Airways ran radio direction finding stations at Honolulu, Midway, and Wake Island to track its Clipper flying boats. On the nights of July 4th and 5th, those stations swung their antennas toward the mystery signals and took bearings. Plotted on a chart, the bearings did not point at Howland. They pointed southeast, toward an empty scatter of atolls called the Phoenix Islands, almost directly along the 157-337 line Earhart said she was flying. And on that line, about 350 nautical miles from Howland, sat a deserted ring of coral called Gardner Island. Follow the logic. Earhart reaches the line but never finds Howland. Standard practice for a lost flyer is to run along that line and search for land. To the northwest, there is nothing for thousands of miles. To the southeast lie the Phoenix Islands, with Gardner well within her remaining fuel. Gardner was uninhabited, and at low tide its broad coral reef dries into a flat, hard apron, parts of it nearly as smooth as a runway. The hypothesis goes like this. On the morning of July 2nd, she put the Electra down on that reef, battered but upright, with the right engine clear of the waterline. And for the next several nights, when the tide dropped, she ran the engine and called for help. It would explain the strangest details. Betty Klink's notebook describes a woman giving Earhart's name, frantic about water coming up, struggling with a man who seemed injured and confused. Fred Noonan? Could a 15-year-old really have invented 2 hours of detail that happened to fit an island she had never heard of? And here's the hardest part of this story. Help got close. Achingly close. The Navy took the radio calls seriously enough to redirect the battleship USS Colorado toward the Phoenix Islands. On the morning of July 9, 1937, exactly 1 week after the disappearance, 3 floatplanes catapulted off the Colorado's deck and crossed over Gardner Island. The senior aviator, Lieutenant John Lambrecht, wrote that his crews saw clear signs of recent habitation on an island that was supposed to have been empty for decades. They circled. They saw no airplane. No figure ran onto the beach to wave. So they noted it down, turned, and flew on. Why was there no plane to see? Look at the tides. By July 9th, the wreck had endured a week of rising water and pounding surf, more than enough to drag a damaged aircraft across the reef and over the edge, where the bottom drops away thousands of feet. The credible radio reception stopped around the night of July 7th, 2 days before the search planes arrived. If the Electra washed into deep water that night, the transmissions would end exactly when they did, and a castaway sheltering under the trees would have had only minutes to reach open ground while the engines roared overhead. The search moved on. The aircraft carrier Lexington swept 250,000 square miles of ocean and found nothing. On July 18th, the operation was called off, having cost around $4 million, the most expensive search in American history to that date. The official verdict: Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel and sank near Howland. Every radio call was written off as a hoax or a misunderstanding. Some certainly were hoaxes, but all 57 of them. Then came 1940. Gerald Gallagher, a British colonial officer setting up a settlement on Gardner, reported a grim discovery at the island's southeast end: a partial human skeleton beneath a tree, beside a campfire littered with bird and turtle bones. Nearby lay a sextant box, part of a woman's shoe, and an empty bottle. Gallagher suspected at once that he had found Amelia Earhart. The bones were shipped to Fiji, where a physician named David Hoodless measured them and ruled that they belonged to a stocky middle-aged man. The case closed again. Then the bones themselves vanished from storage, and only the measurements survived. In 2018, forensic anthropologist Richard Jantz of the University of Tennessee reran those numbers with modern methods. His conclusion: the castaways' bones were more similar to Amelia Earhart than 99% of people in a large reference sample. Expeditions to the island, now called Nikumaroro, have since turned up fragments of a 1930s woman's compact, a zipper pull, plexiglass consistent with an Electra cabin window, and a shattered jar matching a 1930s freckle cream. Earhart had freckles and famously hated them. None of it amounts to proof. Skeptics point out that a wrecked freighter, the Norwich City, had stranded sailors on that same reef in 1929, and that no confirmed piece of the Electra has ever been recovered from the island or the surrounding waters. But the radio calls remain. 4 or 5 nights in July 1937, someone transmitted on Amelia Earhart's frequencies from somewhere in the Pacific, at hours when her radio could only have worked on dry land. If it was her, then rescue planes flew over her head on July 9th and turned away, and the most famous missing pilot of the century died slowly, a castaway on a remote ring of coral. Betty Klink kept her notebook for the rest of her life and never stopped believing the voice was real. No one has ever proved her wrong. If you want more true stories like this one, another is waiting for you right here.